Okay, so the first thing you guys are probably wondering is, what does this non-guru have to sell me at the end of this course? Well, I actually have absolutely nothing to sell you. This really is a non-guru e-commerce systems course. So systems course being for people that are a little bit more advanced. So if you're doing between, at least $50,000 a month, it means you probably have something working within your business. So what I want to show you guys in this video is exactly how you can take what's working in your business, systematize it, plug in the right team, and then automate it so that you can actually scale this and do numbers similar to us. So why you should listen to me is over the last 150 days, we've done over $10,387,312.47. Can't forget about the 47 cents. All just on Shopify. That's not including the additional millions of dollars we've done on Amazon. And this is not even all the stores that we currently operate. So moral of the story is we're doing a quite decent amount of revenue with this business model actively across different brands and products. And just in case you don't believe this screenshot, I'll actually go into Hyros to show you these numbers directly. So let's go into here. We'll go back to the same date range that I have on that screenshot. So that's October 15th of 2024. Let's bring that over here to the 15th of March and refresh. And as you can see, the numbers exactly align, and I'm not bullshitting you. So with that all being said, let's jump into this. The reason why I do this for free is because I want to build a personal brand right now. And in the future, I want to start acquiring businesses and partnering with the right businesses. I want to start this process now of putting my face out there, showing that my systems and processes work, allow you guys to utilize them, and then see for yourself. So the only reason we're able to do these kinds of numbers is because we have very solid team members in place to operate on our existing systems that are working. So this wouldn't be possible if it was just me or a very small team trying to do this. This is a full operation that makes this all come together. So that's what I want to show you guys exactly how you can do, whether you're just working yourself or have a very small team, how you can really start to look at this across all functions of your business. So the way I want to start is what I call the systems triangle. So let's go over what this actually is. So there's three main layers to this triangle, right? So the bottom layer over here, this is your core system. This is how you actually automate the existing functions in your business and create it working pretty much autonomously. Now, the second layer of this is managing that system. So the system is only as good as how well you can manage it. So there's going to be two main factors, one with KPIs and numbers, the second with actually taking calls. Third is the management of those existing systems are really only as good as a strategy that you can put forward and the direction that you set that system that you actually create. So that's why that's at the top layer. So let's actually start with the bottom layers, going through each one of these. So workflows, SOPs, team flows, and hiring, where I'll explain each one of these. So number one is we have the workflows, right? So let's move that over here and look at what a workflow is. So I want to give you guys an example of how this would look with, let's say, your creatives workflow. So this is something I've discussed in other videos, is actually the creatives workflow. So you guys can check that out in another video to see how I actually document this. But let's say your creatives process works in the following way, right? The first thing you're going to do is look over the data. The second thing is then you have to do some deep research on that process once you have the data. Then based on your data and research, you actually do some script writing. On the script writing, you'll then do briefing for getting the content or different pieces that you need. That then goes out to content creation, and then you have editing. So this is the actual workflow documented in a way that anyone can clearly understand. So it starts here and it goes down in this function, right? So this is the workflow mapped out. So let's go over a few key parts on this workflow aspect of it, right? So first thing that you should know is that there's flows for each department. So this can be for creatives, but this also you'll do the same thing for your funnels department. You'll do the same thing for your media buying department. And then also what you're going to want to do is at a very high level, you want to have one for your overall front end of the business and overall back end of the business. So you want to have a flow of how you actually acquire customers into your business, and then how you actually then service those customers through the logistics process, through getting them the product, through different ways that you're then selling to them on the back end, and have all of this clearly mapped out. So what I'm going into with this example is a more of an individualized flow within the front end marketing. So this is for your creatives, for example, right? So that's the first point over here. So that's actually the first 2 points over here. Now the third point that I want to go into, which is going to be now on the second part of this triangle, is SOPs. So let's go ahead and move this over here. Okay, so how do SOPs now go with the workflows, right? So with SOPs, you don't want to document everything. I think what you have to look at is highlighting what are some key functions over here. So let's say, the things that are make or break for your ads process is your research. Let's say it's the script writing. So let's just, put these in purple. And let's say it's the briefing process. So what you want to first highlight are what are the key functions that are make or break. Whereas let's say editing is not something that you necessarily have to document. Maybe there's parts of it that you would want to document, but if you're hiring a good and competent editor, they should be able to do the editing without knowing exactly how to use Final Cut or Premiere Pro, right? Those things don't need as much documentation. So instead of just going ahead and documenting everything, understand what are the key functions and really what are the key functions that you're doing. Because at the end of this, what you're really trying to do is take yourself out of the process. So the way that you should do it is everything that you're doing within this process right now, that should be a key highlighted point so that you can actually create the proper SOPs of how you can then document that. So what do I mean by SOPs? SOPs stands for Standard Operating Procedures. So the way that I do it is very, very simple. What I'll do is I'll record myself doing a loom, doing the actual task. So let's say it's script writing, right? I'll record myself actually going ahead and writing a script, do the whole process and just brainstorm and talk out loud as I'm doing it. So instead of just doing it to myself and writing the script, I'm going to say exactly what's going on through my head, speak out loud as I'm doing it. And then what will happen with the Loom video is I'll get a full transcript of what I'm saying. Now with that transcript, what I'll do is then I'll plug that into ChatGPT or Claude. My personal AI that I'm using right now is still ChatGPT just because it has so much history on me, but I'm hearing a lot of good things on Claude and also even Grok. So you can use whatever AI is good for you. But you plug that transcript into the AI, tell it to make an SOP with very detailed instructions of how you would want that to be listed. So you can say, based on my transcript, please put this into a step-by-step process that will clearly outline everything that I mentioned, be able to show people in a check mark standpoint of exactly what to do step by step based on exactly how I did it, and so on and so forth. So the more detailed, just like anything else that you can give in the prompting, the better that this will actually come out to be. Now, number 4 is then having key team members repeat this process. So once you actually create the SOP, hand that over to a key team member to see, can they do what you just did and do it effectively? If they can't do it effectively, understand where the gaps are in your SOPs so that you can then go ahead and start recreating that process so that it can actually work. So that's phase 2 of this. So at this point, what you have is your actual workflow documented. You have the key functions that ideally that you're involved in or key team members that you want to then be able to scale and automate being involved in. And now you have SOPs of the actual workflow that you've been doing documented with a video where people can clearly watch it step by step and a standard operating procedure so people can follow it with checkboxes of exactly what you're doing so that people can actually go ahead and follow that. Okay, now let's move to phase 3, which is the team flows, as we can see over here. So let's go ahead and move this. So what you do with team flows, which I'll give you guys, the exact example of how this actually looks, but with this whole workflow that you've documented and the SOPs that are there, what you're trying to do is assess what are the team flows and key people that you need to operate these different functions that make this workflow come together. So this is what you want to try to outline, and you want to map out exactly how these team members will come together to make each of these tasks connected and come together as a whole. So there's 2 parts with the team flow. One is understanding exactly how this flows in correlation with the workflow. And then another, which would be more of a traditional, org chart or team flow of how that all comes together. So let's use this as our example, right? So we're talking about the data, the research, and the script writing. So for example, I know that the creative strategist can probably take on all of those different functions. Maybe the script writing, we would need a copywriter in there. So the first part of this, to automate these 2 parts of data, research, and partially the script writing, will be the creative strategist. Then for the script writing, and really just the script writing, that'll probably be a copywriter that can do most of that. So that's the second part of it. So as you can see, I'm kind of doing it based on task to task to understand exactly what key person would be needed where to be able to do and handle the different functionalities of these different points. So then, after that, the briefing for the content creators and the content outreach, that would be someone that does the content outreach. So that would be a content outreach person. Then lastly, let's say, for the editing, that's a video editor. Now, each of these different positions might be scaled. So for example, I might need multiple video editors depending on what my actual scale and capacity is, but this functionality and this role would be the same within the team flow that matches this workflow. And obviously the way that this org chart would be presented would be differently, but what I first try to understand is exactly what type of position I would need to handle multiple or one of these tasks. So for example, one of the tasks, the copywriter is doing the script writing, whereas the creative strategist is kind of doing 3 of these functions. So it's just being able to understand what people we need to then automate this different this section of the workflow, right? So that's what I mean by team flows over here. And now just tying this all together, how this works now, just from what you have here, is here you clearly have a function of your business clearly documented with all of the different steps that are needed to complete a given task, that now any team member that you plug in can clearly see and lay out to understand exactly how this whole process is working within your business. Second is you now have these SOPs that show you step by step how to do any of the crucial make or break steps within the functionality, so that anyone can go in and you have it trial and tested with different team members so you know it works, to then be able to take those functions and be able to do it for themselves. And then third over here, you have the actual team flow, so you understand exactly what key positions and team members you're going to need to actually automate this whole function of the workflows and the SOPs. So with that, that moves us to phase 4 over here, which is the actual hiring process. So let's move this up over here, which is hiring. And I'll go real quick because this is going to be a separate video of like how to actually do hiring to fill this in. But at a high level, what you just need to understand is how you fill in those positions and making sure that you do a proper onboarding and training for those different positions that come in. But essentially what I would look at over here is, let's say what we're missing is a creative strategist. So that's in red. But let's say we do have a copywriter. Let's say we do have a content outreach and we do have a video editor. So this would be the position that we would need to fill in to automate it, because maybe I'm currently functioning as this creative strategist. So again, going back to the workflows aspect, those would be things that I'm probably doing a lot of, that I would highlight what I'm doing. I would make sure I create the SOPs, and then I would go and start this hiring process, right? Which the hiring process, I look at it with a few different ways. So one, if it's a leader, that's when I would usually poach talent. So what I mean by poaching talent is recruiting talent from other companies that I know are at the same level or ahead of us, ideally, where I know that someone in their company is doing this position at a high level, and I'm interviewing multiple different people to find people that are, one, a culture fit that I can get along with, that I can work well with, but two, that I know has the experience that is needed to come and lead this department. So for a creative strategist, for example, someone that would be leading this workflow, that would be something that I would probably go and poach for and try to get someone that has the proven talent that can then come and automate this function of our business. Whereas if it's someone like a video editor, I might poach for that still, but more likely I'll probably use Upwork, Fiverr, Indeed, or more traditional hiring methods, because this is something that, especially as you scale, you'll need more editors. You'll need to get more, all at once. Where poaching is usually it's more of a time-intensive process, whereas doing traditional hiring is usually a bit easier, not easier, but lighter. So just to finish off on the hiring point, really what it is you're plugging in different team members for obviously what you need. And that's once you understand exactly the team flow, exactly what the functionality is going to be for each person, making sure that you understand some of these other points that we're about to get into as well, because you need to, as we'll get into on the triangles, the KPIs, you need to understand what KPIs you're looking for before doing the hiring as well. But once you have this whole pieces come together, that's when you really start to plug in the hiring, start to plug in the people and the missing pieces of this system that you've now clearly documented and are going to be able to automate it much more efficiently. So with that being said, now let's move to the next layer of the triangle, which is KPIs and calls, which again, this is managing that system. So let's move to stage 5 over here, which is KPIs. And let's touch on how this actually looks. So these metrics, these don't have to be exactly what you use. Obviously, these are just a few good ones that I've listed out, but really what you want to do is not overwhelm with too many metrics. You want to keep it within the range of 3 to 5, I would say, to be able to identify what success looks like. So this will really help you understand the workflow. And when I'm looking at KPIs, there's a few things that I try to do here. So first off, you want to be able to define what success in this overall department looks like, and really your overall, marketing department and operations department. So first off, at a high level, there's, front end and back end. So understanding what KPIs on the front end would be good and what KPIs on the back end would be good. Second off, let's say we're going and zooming in into the front end stuff, which is more of your marketing. It's understanding between each function of your marketing, what does good KPIs look like on 3 to 5 different level metrics, right? Then, what you want to do is understand within this department, what does success look like on an individual role basis? And when I'm looking at it from a role basis, like for example, creative strategist, I know that the creative strategist is going to be the one that is probably looking over data, doing research, doing script writing, but also managing the rest of the team. So that would be more of like a team level perspective, where a video editor, they're doing more of the video ad. So it's understanding per position within this overall workflow, what are KPIs that you can tie back to these, really at the end of the day, these different functions of the workflow, to be able to measure how well that individual piece of this flow is working, so that you can see where the bottleneck is, which can then also tie back to the hire, and then understand maybe it's a hiring issue, maybe it's a system issue, maybe it's something else. So if something is broken, when you're actually trying to automate, you need to use KPIs to clearly be able to identify where that thing is broken, so that you can then go in and be able to fix it, either with a system issue, which could be your SOPs are not good enough, or with a hiring issue and swapping out the hire that's actually working in there. So those are different ways that you can look at it. The point that I want to just go over here is measuring KPIs and timeframes. So the way that you should do it is on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, quarterly basis, and you can go further than that, but that's really like from workflow efficiency. You want to be able to understand what's your objective. More so on a quarterly basis is where you set kind of those higher level targets, quarterly, and then maybe monthly basis. And then weekly basis is where you should be checking to progress, or checking how the team is progressing to those monthly or quarterly KPIs, and be able to help work with them to pivot if something isn't working. So that's how we'll get into the next point over here. Point number 6, which is calls on this triangle. So let's move this over here, and let's move this over here, and go into the calls. So this is really straightforward, but it just kind of ties into this last point over here, which the numbers and tracking these KPIs is good and all, but how do you actually then, again, pivot if something isn't working, or if there's something that's broken within your whole system? That's where you have calls. So you're going to have a weekly basis call, a monthly basis call, and a quarterly basis call. And these call functions can happen, one, at a team level. So within this department, and this might not be you, this might just be the creative strategist, and they might have their own way of setting up calls. But you also will probably want to have team level calls and maybe department level calls. So that can be a whole different video, honestly, of how you can set up calls. But to keep it pretty simple, pretty much the objective of each call, whether it's on an individual one-on-one basis, or a team level, or department level, is you want to be able to, which we'll get into point number 7, is based on your goals, be able to track those goals on a quarterly basis and set those goals on a quarterly basis, and then use the monthly goals to help pivot those goals based on a month by month basis to reach that quarterly goal. And then weekly, you can check in to see where are their bottlenecks, where are their numbers. Like, let's say these are the KPIs that you set. So if your ROAS isn't where you want it to be on a creative level, understanding why is it not like that? And I have another video of how you can then, dissect some of these metrics even further depending on what's broken, but pretty much understanding exactly what's broken and spending the time on calls to go over the bottlenecks, not spending time going over what's going well. So rooting all the calls based on the numbers that are all rooted to help you understand and identify this system, which we just talked about earlier, to see exactly what's broken or where there might be a gap in the system. So you use these weekly calls to just be able to go over those, address those key bottlenecks, and really set the direction and the workflow that each team member is going to be doing each week on a weekly basis to then achieve those monthly goals and achieve on the monthly basis those quarterly goals. So hopefully that all makes sense, but that's really where I'll keep it from a call standpoint. So let's go into point number 7 now. Okay, so point number 7 is strategy. So as we can see on the triangle, this is strategy, and I'll tie this all together after I go over this point. But again, this also just ties into the same thing I was just kind of saying. So strategy is where you actually will set the goals. And this is usually going to be you as the founder doing it again at the front end and back end level. And if you have a partner, maybe your partner is doing back end level, you're doing front end if you're managing that. And then between the departments, if there's leaders within, let's say your marketing departments are comprised of creatives department, funnel department, and media buying department, then it could be the leaders, depending on how well you have the systemized, setting these goals. But if you're the one who's actually managing it, then you're the one who's responsible to set these goals between department levels as well, where you're then doing it. Really, I like to do this on a longer term horizon. So I'm going to set my goals on a quarterly basis. So this will be from a revenue standpoint, from a spend standpoint. It can be different goals, but you can set what are these North Star goals that will be aligned with what your longer term goals are. So on a quarterly basis, what I'm doing is, if my goal on the year is, for me, for example, my goal is to do $50 million in sales this year alone. So if that's my goal at the yearly basis, I have to break that down to a quarterly level of how that would be possible, and then look at it between, so I'm overseeing most of the marketing departments, what we would need to be doing from a media buying perspective, what we would need to be doing from a funnel perspective, what we need to do from a creative perspective, how those goals can all come together from different key metrics and key KPIs, as we spoke about before, to understand what success would look like, and then root my goals based on that longer term goal, which, if you want to take this one step further, is you can go from the 1 year to what's my 3-year goal to even get to that 1 year goal in the first place. So these you want to keep more high level of just like, what are those numbers that you're trying to achieve? What are the main things you're trying to achieve? What is, the product goals that you have? Just keeping it more at a high level so you understand your roadmap and your plan, which can then be rooted in a 3-year goal, which is, let's say you want to get to a 9-figure exit or something like that. It's understanding what the bigger picture goal is to then set that year goal. And then the year goal is how you actually set this to a quarterly level, which is where the execution actually comes into play. So now that you kind of understand this whole system, hopefully, let's actually look at how this triangle comes together so you can understand how to use this to help systemize your business. So I gave the example from the creatives department, but again, this can happen at an overall marketing perspective, or it could happen in any other department, whether it's, your back-end departments, your website department, your media buying department. It doesn't really matter, right? The first piece over here is you document your workflows. So it's understanding exactly the step-by-step process of how you make that thing happen in your business to work. And that's especially if it's something that's currently working in your business. I'll end this video with a bonus tip of, let's say you want to use native advertising in your business, but you don't have any systems or proven frameworks of how that work. I'll tell you exactly what you could do about that in just a second. But this is for things that are currently working in your business. Again, this is, you're doing, let's just say, minimum $50,000 a month. So you have some things that are working in your business. So the first thing you want to do is be able to systematize those things that are working. So workflows is that first part. SOPs, again, so that's documenting exactly those key functions of that workflow that need to be documented, that either you are doing or someone that you're trying to help scale, so help automate. So maybe it's, your video editors, for example, maybe that's a key function and you do things in a unique way there, but it's because you have a really good video editor. So make them do that same process of documenting those SOPs. It doesn't really matter who's doing it. It doesn't have to be you, but someone should be responsible for those SOPs to then create the team flows around those key functions of exactly what team members you need and what parts of these functions those team members will be doing. And then also having a clear org chart of how that all ties together. And once you understand all of these 3 pieces, that's when you can start doing the hiring process to plug in the right people to make this whole thing work. So once you have those pieces together between the workflows, SOPs, team flows, and then the hiring flow, again, the management aspect of it is being able to set key KPI numbers across each one of these functions of the steps that you need within that workflow, within the department level overall, and then understanding success on an individual team member basis. So setting those numbers, really keeping it very simple, not going more than 3 to 5 metrics on each of these so that you can actually track this at a high level and track it from a numbers perspective. So that's on the KPI standpoint. And then from a call standpoint, that's being able to actually guide the teams, right? So that's being able to have those numbers to review exactly what's happening, understand from the numbers where the bottlenecks are coming in so that you can work with the different team members, or leaders of the team can work with different team members to be able to help solve those different bottlenecks and figure out where that may be coming. And the bottlenecks can come from a lot of different places. Maybe it's, a part of, again, the documentation isn't good enough. So the team members aren't able to actually do what you have them set to be able to do because your system wasn't created good enough, right? So that could be one part of it. The other part is maybe the skill set or the competence of the hire that you have isn't good enough either. So that can be another part. So usually it'll be between one of those two pieces, which you'll be able to identify over a long enough time horizon by measuring KPIs and being able to make sure you're on top of it by having the proper call structure set up, which then all ties into the top level of this, which is the strategy, which is making sure you know exactly where you're trying to get. You have that all rooted within KPIs and numbers and data that you already have in your business, where you're setting your strategic, forecast of where you're trying to go, and then making sure that the team knows it, making sure that the KPIs are aligned to that strategy goal, and you're doing it on a weekly, a monthly, a quarterly, and a yearly, and even 3-yearly basis, is understanding where that strategy comes and how that's rooted with those different KPIs. You're having different calls to be able to manage that. Also, not just on a weekly basis, right? But you're doing calls on a monthly basis to set that strategy. You're doing quarterly basis calls to really set the whole game plan and the KPIs that you're trying to set. So you're doing that all from a call basis, which then roots all back into the strategy, right? So now kind of looking at it the other way, it's the strategy is the one that's actually guiding this whole thing. These pieces is how you're managing that strategy. And this is how you actually have everything documented to make that whole flow work and come together. So just to wrap this up and give you guys the bonus point on this whole thing. So when you want to do this system stuff, this is usually when you have something that's already working in your business. So when you want to systematize is, let's say Facebook ads is your core function of how you're acquiring customers. So with Facebook ads, there's the media buying aspect of Facebook. There's the creatives aspect that you need to fuel that. And then there's the landing page and website aspect, right? So those are the pieces that you probably would want to document yourself first, and then hire, based on those different pieces, as I mentioned over there, to be able to take your working system and then amplify and improve it. Then you want to hire, maybe that really good creative strategist that has experience from another company that can take things to the next level. But if you have something that's working, that's gotten you to a certain point, the first thing that you want to do, and this is just my advice from mistakes that I've made because I've hired before doing systemizing and it's always ended up as a disaster, where that's what you want to do as the first stage, right? But let's say you want to go for a new channel, like I mentioned. So let's say it's, a completely different function of your business, like native advertising that you have no experience. You don't understand how that media buying would work. You don't understand the function of that. That's where you might want to hire someone new to then allow them to come in with no prior system to create that system off the ground. And once they have it working, then doing more of a systemization process if you're going to go ahead and start scaling that. So that's you're essentially hiring someone to create the system versus when you have something working, you create the system first and then hire on top of your existing system to then scale and take that system to the next level. And again, from my experience, where this has worked really well for me is whenever I've gone to new functions. So for example, we weren't running any display advertising in our business, which is another form of native advertising. We hired someone who had the experience, who was an incredible media buyer and has amazing talent. And she came in with no prior system, very little supervision, and did an incredible job. Whereas other times we've hired people to come in, as a copywriter within our department or someone to try and lead our web and funnel department, but we had no systems or none of this stuff actually documented. So when we hired the person, they came in with a non-existent system where they had a lot of talent. We brought them in from very good companies that were ahead of us, that scaled ahead of us, but they came in with no prior existing system where that whatever non-documented system it was, that was what was fueling our actual operation, our actual growth from a marketing standpoint. And because there was nothing there, he couldn't take what was there to work on top of it and make it work, so that the current flow that was working for our business stopped working because we left it without a system there. And that person wasn't working with the existing stuff that was working, so that when they came in, they tried to bring what they knew, but they neglected what was already working, and then that all failed. So with this, the talent is really only as good as the system that you have. And if you don't have a way to document and showcase, and it doesn't even have to be as complex as this, and hopefully this helps simplify it for a lot of you guys, but it can be really just as simple as possible. But you have to have a way that you can make sure that what's currently working in your business stays working, so that the hires that you bring in keep that going and then build on top of it, rather than neglecting it and just trying to build something new when that's the core function of your business. So hopefully that makes sense. Like if you're hiring something that doesn't exist in your business, then it's fine to not have a system, in my opinion. If it's something that you're hiring for something existing in your business, make sure that you have this system documented. So hopefully this shows you guys exactly how you can go about documenting it. Obviously, with all of this, there's a lot more, pieces to it. So you have to have, more of these spreadsheets and ways to track it. There's a lot of different ways you can go about KPIs depending on department. Same with calls. You have to structure those calls in a specific way. So I can't go over all of that in this one video. So, depending on what you guys want to learn more of, just comment it below. But hopefully this gives you guys a lot of insights and actionable steps that you guys can take to start systematizing your business, especially with this bottom layer. That's really what's super important, of like making sure that the workflows, the SOPs, the team flows, that's all documented so that you can go in and, start to do hiring properly and then figure out this piece as you go. Because it's really go from bottom to top to really document this. So thank you guys for watching, and comment with any questions you have below.